On this episode of the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast, we have the one and only Eric Sue, the CEO of ClickFlow and Single Grain, and these guys are responsible for spending well over $18 million a year in the B2B realm. We dive into weaponizing the data you have, having an omni-channel approach. We also even chat on some mergers and acquisitions side of things. If you're interested in investing, thinking for yourself, and knowing where your money's going, make sure to check this one out. Eric is an open box, and this one is super awesome.
Honestly, we probably should have killed it at 25, 30K, but we ended up spending like 100. So the campaign net, I think we probably ended up losing maybe 20 to 30K. So it wasn't even, to be honest, if we decided to focus on it more, we probably could figure it out. But we just said, hey, we don't feel, we feel there's better opportunities with other offers. So, let's move on.
You're listening to the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast, where we break down the financial principles that rich advertisers are deploying today to turn advertising into profit and get tons of traffic to their websites without killing their cash. These advertisers, agencies, affiliates, brands are responsible for managing over $1 billion a year in ad spend. You'll hear about what's working for them today, their rich ads, and we'll roast their epic failures and crappy ads on the internet with poor ads. Let's get into it.
All right, everybody, we are back in business with another episode of the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast. We got your host, Dylan Carpenter, in the house. Hope everybody's doing well. Now, today we have an exciting guest, and I'm personally amped to freaking chat with this individual. But we got the CEO of ClickFlow and Single Grain. These guys probably manage roughly 15 to 18 million a year, mainly in the B2B SaaS or tech company kind of side of things. But he's also the host of the Marketing School and Leveling Up podcast. So we're on that podcast train, so y'all make sure to check that out. But when the hype is real, we got Mr. Eric Sue. How's it going, man?
I'm good, Dylan. Thanks for having me here.
Not a problem. So give everybody a little idea and some context to kind of who you are, kind of what you're getting into, so everybody has an idea.
Yeah. So, like you mentioned, I have a podcast called Marketing School. I do it with another marketer named Neil Patel. And I also have a podcast called Leveling Up. That's really where I just nerd out and talk to other business owners, authors, or just other kind of high performers to learn from them. And then there's a couple of businesses that I have, like you mentioned. I do have operators that run those businesses. Nowadays, I'm trying to focus more on either looking for other deals or just creating content, just kind of high leverage things that only I can do on my site, or at least what I perceive only I can do. And yeah, from there, just playing the game of business. Have a book coming out called Leveling Up in February, and yeah, just enjoying life as it goes.
Heck yeah, man. And congrats on the book. I mean, that's got to take some time to really, sit down and, come up with all the material more or less, or it may come second nature.
5 years, man. It's the book. You know what they say about the book is you're gonna go through like 5 to 7 drafts. You're gonna have a ton of editors that go through it, and it takes a lot longer than you think it does.
Oh, I can only imagine, especially when it's done right. Because I mean, shoot, that's got to be a task. But I mean, it's probably going to blow up, I would imagine. So,
I hope so. We'll see. That's the plan.
heck yeah, man. So you mentioned kind of looking for deals. What kind of deals you looking for? Is it to acquire companies, clients? How is that kind of tone out there?
Yeah. So, right now, I think, I think a lot of people listening to this, it's always, what's the newest marketing tactic, or what are the newest marketing strategies? I think one of the kind of unseen gems is, it seems like a big word, mergers and acquisitions. But at the end of the day, what you're doing is, if you go buy other assets, whether it's other SaaS companies or other websites, you're often going to be able to take advantage of it immediately. And then, oftentimes it's 1+1 = 3. So you plug it in with your audience, and then, they enjoy it. And then all of a sudden, you get to reap the rewards. I think it sounds a lot more complicated than it actually is. And I think most people think they need to be really smart or like an investor with a lot of money. It's just not true.
Man, that is super interesting. So with these, mergers or acquisitions, where does your role come in? Does it come into, kind of partner up, use their audiences? How exactly do you integrate with them if you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, sure. So, one good example of this would be the ad agency that I own, Single Grain. So, I took the company over about 7 years ago, and I bought the company for $2 out of pocket, and it was a failing ad agency at the time. An SEO agency actually, and the services that we were doing were no longer working. So I basically negotiated a deal where I was able to take over the website, all the assets, and then I put in a contingency that if the company were to fail, I would end up owing nothing. And so, that ended up working out, and that's a deal where I had to put in a lot of sweat equity. This is 7 years ago again, but it worked out, and we are able to turn the company around. And I went from at the time owning 10% of the company to now I own 100% of the company, and then I just basically take the cash flows from that business and reinvest it in areas that I see fit.
Oh man, I love it. Heck yeah, man. This is going to be exciting. So, as we spoke about it a little earlier. We love to dive into, as you mentioned, what's working, some of the newer strategies, but it's pretty loosely open there. So, I mean, when we dive into more of the rich ad, what's working good for y'all? What's y'all's rich ad here?
Yeah. So, I think a lot of people are probably sharing tactics around, actually running ads. I think one of the biggest things that works well for us is when we think about, going omni-channel, right? And so, what do I mean by that? So, right now, let's take a look at the Single Grain website. So we have our blog, right? And our blog, from an SEO standpoint, we get decent traffic, about 300,000 visits a month. So, we produce content. And then, what we do there is we have a lot of people hitting our website. And what we do after that is we layer on what we call, or not what we call, it's what they call a customer data platform. So, a customer data platform is basically something that allows us to, combine all the disparate data sources that we have. We might have data sources from like HubSpot, and then the sales enablement tools that we're using like Outreach, and then different ad tools like Facebook, for example. And then we're able to basically say, okay, we have this visitor named Dylan that visited our website. He opted in for this lead magnet over here, and then he also took this action in Intercom over here. And now we have an entire timeline of what Dylan performed on our website, and we can serve that user accordingly, right? So if they're really interested in content around SEO, we can serve that up to them in an ad. We can automatically create an ad, right? Or we can automatically have our salesperson go out and send them automatic email based on the behaviors on on our website. So without getting too much in the weeds, we are now able to weaponize the data that we have, because before you would have all these disparate data sources that wouldn't really tell you kind of what's the whole story is with a user like Dylan. Now we can actually do that, and now we can automatically put them into sales campaigns, ad campaigns, and all that, because we have data hitting our website, right? So, customer data platforms are something that's worked well for us. We actually managed to get um, about a seven-figure podcast deal for marketing school because
Ooh.
someone visited our website and indicated that they're really interested in the podcast. And then that's how we got one of the deals done. So that's just one example of a seven-figure deal we got done.
Oh man, you mentioned something, weaponizing the data you have. I think you
Yep.
should trademark that, man. That was beautiful.
Thank you for that. I
um,
appreciate
when it comes to how you kind of follow around on the kind of data side of things, how far out does it go? Is it 30 days, 60 days? Would you be able to see things I was looking at maybe say 3, 4 months ago, or is it pretty real time oriented?
I mean, you can go pretty far. I think I actually don't even know if there's a limit. So
Damn.
yeah, it can go as far as you need to. They have if you use something like hull.io, which is what we use, it's hull.io. You can use a tool called Segment. They just got bought for a couple $1 billion by Twilio. And so like, I think the sky's the limit. It's actually, in our day and age, people talk about data being really important. Data is the new oil and all that. I think the possibilities are endless. I think especially if those of you listening right now are really into e-commerce, I think it makes a lot of sense to be using customer data platforms. I think in the e-commerce world, most people use Lytics. That's Lytics.
Yeah.
So take a look at it if you aren't taking advantage already.
Oh yeah, and I mean, there's never a better way to understand your customer, journey more or less. So I mean, I think these are killer points because I mean, tracking attribution, the data side of things. I mean, the amount of value you can get up at knowing these numbers is unreal to just really probably level up the business as a whole.
Yeah, it's like cheating. So
Oh yeah, the weaponizing, man, I can't get over that. I'm gonna be talking about that all day.
This episode is brought to you by Funnel Dash's Ad Card, the only charge card exclusively for your digital ad spend in partnership with MasterCard. And if you are an aggressive affiliate dealing with dozens of ad accounts, or you are in gray hat or black hat verticals such as drop shipping, CBD, or other verticals where you're dealing with ad accounts getting shut down, business managers getting shut down, or even deplatformed from platforms like Facebook and Google, then you absolutely need to check out Funnel Dash's Ad Card. We give you unlimited free virtual debit and credit cards, so you can have a dedicated card for every single ad account campaign. And you can attach any name and address in the US, so you have complete anonymity on the card and at the card level. Plus, one of my favorite features is that you don't have to pre-fund or even top off like most typical virtual card solutions today. So if this is you and you're operating these verticals, whether you're an agency or an advertiser, then check out AdCard at funneldash.com.
Heck yeah. So, that's quite a rich ad segment there. So, I mean, while that's working really good for y'all, what's something on the more poor ad side of things that you thought would maybe kill it, but maybe didn't work out that way?
yeah, I mean, there's few and far between that don't work for us. So like I'm trying to remember, like I'm trying to give you a spectacular example. Um, I would say, what hasn't worked for us. I know recently we actually have so we have a program out there that teaches people how to um it's basically a quote unquote, I hate using the word coaching program, but that's what it is, right? It coaches people on how to scale their agency out. And so, what we did with that one was we had the ads working, and we were driving, we weren't spending like a ton. Maybe we were spending like I don't know, a couple $1,000 a day, $2,000 $3,000 a day, and we just would not give up on this campaign. So we were trying to drive leads to a phone call and then close people on a $10,000 deal there, right? And then there's a couple companies out there that are doing 15, $20 million a year, and we're like, okay, we can do the same thing too. And what we realized was that we we would have a daily stand up. We'd have like a weekly 90-minute meeting. We're doing all the things. We had the marketing working, but what we couldn't figure out for the life of us was the sales side of things, right? And
Mm.
what we learned was that instead of trying to figure everything out on our own, we probably should have just hired people out there that have actually done this multiple times with success, and we probably would have been successful there. But because we dragged it out and tried to figure it out on our own, we ended up losing a lot of money there, and we ended up losing a lot of time. So I think this also just not only applies for things on the advertising side or like the sales side of things, but just in general when it comes to hiring people, figuring out, okay, who out there is maybe 2 to 3 times 4 times bigger than you, and who are their top three executives that you can go out there and hire and just poach instead of trying to figure everything out on your own, because that's a sure recipe for disaster. All the time you spend trying to remake the mistakes, all the money you're spending too, you're just better off hiring people that have been there, done that, and you're going to move a lot faster. So
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Now, you mentioned the marketing was on point, but the sales side was kind of struggling. When it comes
mhm.
to a 10K deal, is it a one call close typically, two calls? How'd y'all kind of have that set up out of curiosity?
Yeah, so we wanted to do a one call close, and we did get a couple of one call closes. That being said, we ended up. I'll tell you the mistake that we made. We ended up using an outsourced sales company that didn't really understand our offer. And when we listened to them on the calls, we gave them too much leeway too. We use a software called Gong, that's GONG.io, for sales coaching, and we knew from the very first day that it was just way off. Right? It's just we were too nice, and we gave them too much leeway.
Oh man, that is wild. So, from a more marketing standpoint, when it comes to trying to convert someone on a 10K deal, what kind of metrics do you look at on the kind of front end side for possibly a cost per booked call, if you even have those numbers or have it, an idea of those?
Yeah. So we primarily were looking for The main thing we looked at every day, from my memory, just joining some of these stand-ups, is that we were mainly looking at the click-through rate first, right? Because obviously, if you don't have good creative, and people aren't clicking through, then that affects all your down funnel metrics. We would look at, how much cost per qualified application was, right?
Yeah.
So for that, we're basically looking at a couple $100 per cost per qualified application, and then just, as long as our click-through rate is above 1%, ideally 1.5%, we're in a pretty happy spot, right? So we're constantly refreshing new creatives, and then we're kind of rotating in and out. But we had the marketing dialed in. We just never had the sales completely locked in. And then by that time, it was a little too late. So we ended up moving to another campaign.
Oh man, when it comes to like that kind of campaign strategy, you mentioned you had it kind of running a little bit, kind of spinning the wheels. Is that something you'll spend 10K on to gauge if it works? 5K, 20K, 100K? Where's y'all's kind of kill spot or kill switch spot
Yeah.
there?
Honestly, we probably should have killed it at we probably should have killed it at 25, 30K, but we ended up spending like 100. So the campaign, net, I think we probably ended up losing maybe 20 to 30K. So it wasn't even, to be honest, if we decided to focus on it more, we probably could figure it out. But we just said, hey, we don't feel, we feel there's better opportunities with other offers. So, let's move on.
Oh, that makes complete sense. So, what's been your highest ticket offer out of curiosity? Being 10K for that one deal, have you had others that are a lot higher? I'm kind of curious on that side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's so like, with agency type stuff, I mean, these are seven-figure plus deals. The podcast deal I told you about, and this is public knowledge, but for the marketing school podcast, we have a deal with a hosting company, and they pay us about $800,000 a year. And again, that's just like, the offer, quote unquote. But if you're asking about, something that, like an offer that we're constantly, selling on repeat, I think the one that we're focused on right now is ClickFlow, which is a software. And that offer is, give or take about $5,000 to $10,000 a year, if not more.
Oh man, that's a pretty solid LTV there.
Yeah.
Can't complain at all. Heck yeah. Yeah, we've had so many individuals talk about, just large deals. So it's really, 10K, 50K, 100K. So it's always interesting to hear the kind of thought process behind those. So much appreciated, man. Now, we got the final piece of the pie. I'm pumped on this one. So we always try and find a crossroads between the marketing and financial side of things, and I think this will be really valuable for our listeners here. So, I mean, based on your expertise and experience, what kind of financial principles or tips could you share with the audience here?
Yeah, I mean, I love this. I think I'm glad that on this show you guys are talking about financial tips beyond just kind of the marketing stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, everything kind of ties in together. You're trying to build a business. You have to have good financial sense. You have to know kind of where you're putting in your money, right? So you are, rich ad, poor ad. We are very much investors on this podcast, or those of us listening. So the one thing I'll say is, going back to the very beginning, right? It seems counterintuitive, but oftentimes it could be better to buy versus build, right? And there's actually a book called Buy Then Build. So go out there, find other businesses or websites, right? Instead of saying, hey, maybe I need to spend $3 million on ads, can you go buy a website that's generating, a couple 100,000 visitors a month, and then use that, use all the traffic you're getting there, use the email list there, use the leverage you get there. And then 1 + 1 = 3, right? So there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat there to do deals like that. That's one thing. The other thing I'll say is, right now, given all the craziness, and by the way, guys, this is not financial advice, this is for entertainment purposes.
Mm.
If you look at what a lot of people are doing, there's a guy out there, he put about 425 million dollars of his entire company's balance sheet. It's a publicly traded company. He put it in Bitcoin, right? Um, and then you have Square, who put about $50 million of their balance sheet into Bitcoin. So right now, it's just, the everything's pretty volatile out there, right? So, cash, people are saying cash is trash. Can you really rely on cash right now? Right? We don't know, right? People are talking about bonds and all that too. Like, you can't rely on bonds either. So, it behooves us that if you wanted to be cautious, to have some schmuck insurance, putting maybe 1% or 5% of your assets, or I'm speaking for myself right now, into Bitcoin, if not more. If you think Bitcoin is going to be the horse for the future, then you do that, because you know that you can't really trust what's going on out there with, all the cash that's being printed. All you can do is, trust that the future might be digital. And, you put a chunk of again, speak about me, I put a chunk of my money into Bitcoin, and then, just let it sit there. And then that way, hope I'm protected. And you hope it doesn't go up, because if it goes up like a ton, it goes up rapidly. That means the world is crumbling, right? So I think it's,
Mm.
and what I'm really saying here is that um, learning to think for yourself. So you might not agree with me that Bitcoin is the way to go. You might say Bitcoin's a fraud, but I'm just saying that learning to think for yourself and learning to think ahead before poo poo hits the fan or peanut butter hits the fan. That's really going to help you in terms of not only how you think about investing, but how you run your business as well.
Oh man. So this one just came, out of my train of thought. This is super interesting. But I mean, if you could give yourself some sort of advice in the investing realm 10 years ago, what would you kind of tell yourself?
Yeah, I'm going to say this is in investing and also in the marketing world too. I think one of the most defensible things you can do is, and it sounds cliche, is to build a brand, right? Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger always talk about buying businesses with a moat. And the reason they love See's Candy so much is because it's got a brand, it's got a moat, and they can continually increase their prices over time because the brand's so strong. And so, what can you do to create a brand, to create even stronger than that, to create a community, right? I just had a guy earlier on my podcast today. His name's Lloyd, and he created a conference called Traction, and it's got its communities over 60,000 people. He throws some of the most amazing conferences, some of the most amazing dinners. Doesn't charge people for it. Gives all the money, gives all the profit away to um, nonprofits out there. And so, what he's done is he's created a brand, and a lot of people end up asking about what he does for his business. And then his business has grown, really fast. Hasn't raised a single dollar of funding, just because his brand is so strong, right? So it's like, can you go out there and, if you're good at audio, okay, you can go out there and do podcasts. Are you good at video? Okay, you can be like, guys out there like Graham Stephan, right? He's got like 2 million plus followers on YouTube, and he makes millions a year off of that, right? So how can you create that one man media company, which a lot of people are doing right now? You can go create a newsletter like Substack, but you create the brand, and then you can start to kind of diversify into other channels, and then you can tie your business in with that brand, and then you're going to be a lot more defensible than a lot of other companies that have just focused on building products, right? I think it's hard to commoditize a brand. I think with a lot of products, you can actually commoditize them. So I'd say, 10 years ago, I would just focus on, initially creating the content, getting the suckage out of my body, and then, getting better and better over time. And, I don't see one person that has regretted putting in that time and money into content and building that brand. And then plus, when you later that on with ads later, it gets cheaper too, because people know who you are. So that's what I would say.
Oh yeah, and the creative is so much easier. You can have some selfie style ads. You don't got to go full production style.
Yep.
Man, this has been a really interesting one. I really appreciate all the insights.
Anytime.
So, give everybody an idea, how can they get in touch? How can we support you? How can everybody kind of find you online?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want the first chapter of the book for leveling up, it's actually, if you go to levelingup.com, you can pick it up. And you can actually pre-order the book too. Just go to Amazon or just check out Leveling Up wherever you get your books. And then you can find me on Twitter or Instagram at Eric OSIU.
Heck yeah, man! This Twitter train's getting pretty crazy, isn't it, for this industry?
Yeah, I mean, so that's the other thing, right? Like, here's the other hack. Like, the smartest people are hanging out on Twitter, so go hang out on Twitter, because you never know who you might interact with.
That's been the one platform this year that's kind of shocked me. Everybody's having normal conversations. High level CEOs, beginners, to where I think Twitter is getting super underrated. To where I'm starting to notice this is starting to be a badass platform.
Yep.
Well, Eric, man, this has been an absolute pleasure, man. Thanks for jumping on. Loved it.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to another episode of the Rich Ad Poor Ad podcast. If you're like me and listen to podcasts on the go ahead and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and richadpoorad.com/podcast. And if you absolutely love the show, go ahead and leave a review and a comment, share with a friend. If you do, Take a copy, screenshot of it, email me, Zach@funneldash.com, show me you left a review, and I'll give you a free copy of the Rich Ad Poor Ad book. To learn more about the book, go to richadpoorad.com. To leave a review, go to richadpoorad.com/review. Thanks again.